otherwise she won't hear us talking.
Please speak loudly and clearly in your microphones like this. Please.
Mr. Brown?
Mr. Brown? Yeah.
7 minutes.
We got a second? 6 minutes.
Well, you're hosting it, don't know. Downtown.
Well, Discover Lehigh Valley is now in Easton. No. We don't have event space.
No, but they do them in restaurants. 30 people at a
Oh, yeah.
How you holding up?
No, until we get to the hotel, you don't have a place for 30 people.
What about top of the hill? The old,
Twin Rivers? Two Rivers?
What am I thinking?
Yeah.
Oh, Isabella.
I got it. Right.
Hold 30. Look, they have lights on. They're working at night. They've been working every night till 7 o'clock. After 7.
and forward it to the mayor, please, sir. I'll let them know. Well, they said they're gonna, because they have like a lot of events for the rest of the year in the right square.
Tony just sent me a text. Over the weekend, he said to me,
How are you?
I'll let you know. I'll give you a call.
oh, don't tell me I got rid of it already. Here it is. He was at a show, at the theater and dinner, and he had a great time in Easton. He loves what's going on in Easton. That's what he said to me.
I get away. I'm drained mentally.
Mayor, we just forwarded it to you. That is the traffic impact study.
Okay.
When I saw the first one, Louis, I thought I found $1 million.
How are you doing, Mr. Kibos? Huh? Tampa's great. It's 86 degrees in Tampa today. I should be there. I should be at a steakhouse having dinner. I'm here talking budgets. I always want to spend 8 hours in Newark Airport anyway. And I didn't eat all day because they kept postponing it 1 hour at a time. Why don't you just cancel the flight at 9 o'clock this morning instead of waiting 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4:30, 5:30?
Did it ever go?
No, I don't know. I don't know. Oh, and the sun. Like my brother used to work in off of 287 North for First Energy. In the morning when he went to work, he had a son. When he coming home, he had to. You too.
Hey, Mayor Lewis got to immerse himself into Eastern culture on Friday night. He was giving high fives to people in the audience and everything he gave.
He was.
He let himself go a little bit. Yeah. Little baby,
Your Loney or your Heine?
Did you say hello to you? It was a good game. It's a tough decision. Where you go?
You don't. You know, if it's a season, here's my idea. And I had his dad as a coach. I don't understand it. During the season, you go for 2. Okay, go for the win. It's a game, and you got another game next Friday night. But when you are in the playoffs and you want to extend your season, you go for the tie.
But apparently our kicker was off.
Well, I understand that.
And the wind
Yeah, I don't-
was blowing at them.
I didn't disagree with that.
No.
Way off. He almost beat
And they had an NFL kicker. Like every team we play, it seems like there's one guy who's going like 6 times D1.
Well,
So happened Mays had
the NFL's getting ridiculous.
what's that?
The NFL's getting ridiculous. 53, 55-yard field goals.
No, I thought Mays,
They get the ball on the 30, they go 20 yards, and they kick the field goal.
Mays' kicker was unbelievable.
All except that kid
Yeah.
from Penn State that got cut. He was a local kid. He was Penn State's kicker, and he missed a bunch of kicks early, and they cut him.
Mr. Kingsley, you can start whenever you'd like.
Okay, no introduction necessary. Big crowd, feeling good. Good evening, council. Let me try to run you through a very brief overview of my budget, and I'll gladly take any questions you may have. I believe Lewis has me on a timer. I am to come in under 10 minutes. So I'm going to do everything that I can to actually get there. I'm kidding. He hasn't put me on a timer. So first, we're going to kind of go over our staff, as we always do. This is kind of the same budget overview I always provide, which starts with our staff, which is absolutely wonderful, and then goes through kind of our accomplishments for the year, and then culminates in the changes to our budget year over year. So department staff hasn't changed an awful lot here. I think most know that we did bring in kind of a replacement to Sean Ziller as he exited to go to the city of Bethlehem. Rachel Roseman is our new program administrator. Trevor was then, moved up to our community and economic development administrator, which was actually Sean's former job title. Inside of the budget that I'm presenting, I am asking that we consider raising Mr. Pinho up to our deputy director position, which doesn't currently exist. So that is one thing that's contemplated in our budget, is a change in terms of department staff. And then we would seek to refill the grants administrator position that he vacated in coming into the community economic development administrator, and we haven't really had filled since that point in time. Redevelopment Authority staff has stayed largely the same. It is myself, Mike Bretz, our deputy director, Sarah Eddings is our fiscal and grants administrator, Kelly Joseph is our rehabilitation program manager. We added a grant and fiscal technician in the past year. Her name is Taria Roach Pritchett, and she is our accountant for the Redevelopment Authority. So we actually have a person who can manage those tasks more, I think, efficiently than previously. To make sure I'm on the right. Okay. Beyond staff changes, minor as they may be, we have our accomplishments for 2024, which I'm going to try and run through really quickly. As the department has been doing in previous years, we've been, very active in our resource development activities. We've added $3.5 million in our awarded grants over the last year. You can see how they're broken down between the police and fire departments, parks and trails, infrastructure work, affordable housing, and those that we have worked with on third-party sub-recipients that are nonprofit city partners. All total, again, $3.5 million added to our portfolio. We have $19.8 million in new grant applications that are awaiting decision that were submitted this year. So far, 28 applications written in-house year to date with a 53% award rate. That is astounding. And that is a testament to the work that Trevor has done in managing our resource development activities. He's done an absolutely phenomenal job. In partnership with the RDA, we completed our second round of residential facade program processing. So we processed 36 additional applications, awarded a total of $360,000 to those projects. We have 40 projects that are now completed in the facade improvement program. We have 27 projects out for bid or that are in progress. The balance of the projects will actually be done in 2025. Also got Eastern Iron and Metal finally under agreement of sale with VM Development, as council is well aware. That was a long time in coming, a lot of work being done in terms of evaluating the site yield, as well as going through various characterizations and work with the EPA to obtain additional funding to assist with the cleanup to the expectations of the developer. And we're now at a point where we're actively moving towards the remediation phase and towards a transaction with the VM Development. We also led program and committee completed planning for Winter Village 2024. I should say we're not completely done with planning, but we're close. And obviously the huts went out today. We have about a dozen or so out there right now, Dave. So we're well underway in terms of preparing for the Winter Village. Last two items on here kind of giving you an idea of some of the revenue we've been deriving from our activities. And these are important as it relates to the budget reconciliation I'm going to take you through in a moment. So completed outdoor dining program year 5, $27,000 in revenue.
Is that a net price after parking revenue? Or
Yeah,
is
you mean,
that's
is
the
it
gross?
net of the parking impact? It's not net of
Okay.
parking
All right.
impact. That's
Still
actual
good,
revenue.
still a good amount of money.
Yeah. And then completed administration of 2 RACP grants, which we closed out, which brought in $105,000 in additional revenue. Again, these are important as we look at the budget going forward. Also completed creation of the Affordable Housing Development Corporation. So Home Easton is now fully functional and has its 501c3 status. We'll be unveiling the landlord training program later this year to really begin operations in the beginning of 2025. We are also working in creating the Affordable Community Bank, the Affiliated Community Bank, and the CDFI, which we expect to be fully formed by the middle of 2025. And my hat's off to Neil Complin for all of the work that he's done in this in terms of assembling the initial Housing Development Corporation, but also the work that he's doing to help us create banking interest in developing the Community Development Financial Institution. I believe he has 4 banks that are already on board with joining this organization. And we're really confident about having these 2 pieces in place, the work that we're going to be able to do as an organization. I'm sorry if I don't have the right slide up. I do. Okay, good. Finally, we completed we started the first 2 affordable housing projects that are main projects for the RDA in the next couple of years. So we started construction on 322 Cole Street, which everybody saw the groundbreaking related to that project. That's 2 units of owner-occupied affordable housing that'll be available in the 3rd quarter of 2025. And then we've begun renovation at 824 Ferry Street, the redevelopment of the old church property into 4 affordable housing rental units, which we expect to be completed in the 1st quarter of next year. As we move on to the actual, kind of budget review year over year, my budget does, suggest a significant increase year over year on a percentage basis, 36%, $196,500 in addition. This is largely relates to increases in general salaries. So if we agree that the deputy director position should be created and that Trevor would be the person who would fill that role, that would add an additional $15,000 to staffing expense. Our program manager position was previously funded through revenue replacement in ARPA and now needs to have a permanent home in my budget. So that was previously covered under other funding resources and now would come under my budget specifically. And then we would be looking to refill the grants administrator position, which was left vacant when Trevor moved into the economic and community development administrator position. So that would add another 65. So those 3 pieces there are largely the change in my budget year over year of a total $148,000. We're also looking at a increase in marketing and advertising expense of $14,500. This is going to be to assist in DMO and business recruiting and marketing strategy that we're working on with the Greater Easton Development Partnership, and actually would help leverage funds that GEDP has brought in to the fold to help assist in doing this marketing strategy. They've got a $95,000 award that we would match with these funds, among others. Finally, management services are also increasing year over year, and this is to fund our analytics software known as Placer AI. We use this software for a variety of purposes, not the least of which is to estimate attendance at our events. We also use it for the purposes of providing technical support to our businesses in the city so that they can understand the market in which they operate. Not only does it do pedestrian counts, it also gets into the demographics of the individuals that it's actually counting for. So it can use cellular data to get into household income related information for the areas in which those cell phones are coming from. So that information obviously helps us to define the city's market much better and the kinds of attendance and kind of expenditures we're seeing in the city. Increase in the budget is significant, no doubt. We are anticipating increasing revenue year over year. We brought in over $100,000 in grant management and program management last year. We expect to bring in over $150,000 this year and in future years, and that would help to offset the cost of the new position and the related costs that I'm outlining. Wanted to give you an overview of what this grants administrator position has done since its inception, and that is largely where those budget increases are coming from, refilling that grant administrator position. To date, since we've had a grant administrator, we've submitted 98 applications with a 65% success rate. This has created an average monthly award in grant funding of $235,000. We now have an active grant portfolio of $10.3 million, and the total return on investment is roughly 33 times what we're investing in that individual position. You can see how those awards have been made. And I wanted to make clear, this doesn't include any of the RACP funding that we administer. We're administering currently about $16 million in RACP funding, which actually actually creates much of the revenue that I spoke of earlier. It's that management fee that we are able to bring in as a supportive revenue to offset some of these costs. These are really grants that we are actually promoting specifically to fund otherwise, a cost that the city would otherwise have to bear. So police and fire department received $1.7 million. We brought in $1.1 million for our urban forestry program, $1.8 million for vehicle and pedestrian safety, infrastructure improvements and the like, $460,000 for our park system, and $1 million for affordable housing. So that is a quick overview of my budget and what we're requesting, and I'm glad to answer any questions you may have. And I thank you for the time.
It's Mr. Pinnabones, you're chairing this committee? Sorry. Dr. Ruggles has a
Just a question on when you presented the management services,
Yes.
20,000
Yes.
additional. The way you worded it, I'm not sure. Is that something that is an annual
Yes, it is.
$20,000 every year?
It is an annual fee to maintain a subscription with Placer AI, and it's currently $25,000 a year. $25,000 a year that we pay Placer AI to have access to that software, and that number unfortunately is going up year over year. That software is becoming very desirable, and they are raising their prices. At some point, we intend to look for a lower cost provider, and there are others that are coming into that particular market, but they're slow and they're not nearly as robust in terms of the information they can provide or as accurate in the information they can provide.
The other question I have is just an opinion. Okay. I think what you've done is great, and it's very evident that having that grant writer is very beneficial.
Sure.
What would happen if we had another
If we had another what?
grant writer? I mean, you
Can't,
this is pretty impressive how many that you've put in,
Mhm.
but I'm pretty sure there's a lot more out there.
there are.
and
We barely
I
touched
mean,
the surface.
an individual reaches their limit, right? And if hiring another grant writer
Mhm.
brings us in another $2 million, whatever number it is. You know,
Is it
seems to be worth it to me.
doing? You're not wrong.
Yeah.
I think what we intend to do, and this is going to increase capacity because while Trevor is going to move more into a community development planning role in the department, he is still going to be writing some of the higher, the higher level grants that we will submit, and probably be more focused on federal grants than he is on state and local. And he will also be overseeing some of the contracts that we put in place to have third parties write grants, because occasionally we'll bring in one of the more nationally recognized, resource development organizations to help us write grants where it's necessary. So I'm going to say the capacity is going to be somewhat increased here. It's not going to be the same year over year, because you'll get probably 20 to 30% of Trevor's time will be dedicated to grant writing, and then you'll have a full-time grant writer in there too. So there will be some additional capacity that comes from this. We kind of want to test and see how it works out in year one, and we may be coming back and asking for further consideration.
I mean, I would like to see an individual who focuses on some big ticket items that we are looking to achieve in the future, like a new fire station.
Sure.
And that type of thing. Because there's a lot of research that has to go in to identify where the funding sources are, and then research to actually generate the grant that you're going to put in. And a lot of those are also creating the contacts that you need. Well, anyway, I don't need.
I'm glad you're touching on all this, because all this really important. I mean, another thing that that Trevor's going to be focusing on is the relationship development work that needs to occur to give us those strong relationships with federal, state, and grant, sources. So that we can be more active and more aggressive in applying for those, and more successful for that matter, in applying for those grants. I also wanted to say, as it relates to the fire department, we're already starting to work on trying to pave ways with the state to be able to help fund the updated fire stations. I will tell you, we have in for request additions to the itemization list to allow us to fund those projects through things like RACP. So they will be eligible projects. We are starting that process, and we feel at some point we will be successful at the state level in bringing in significant resource.
Yeah, I mean, I know that it's some of the grants are really time intensive.
They are.
And I actually was part of a grant that we wrote when I was on a summer fellowship up in New Hampshire, right? We submitted the grant. We flew down to Washington to meet with the people in order to secure the grant.
That's the relationship development side.
That's just how it's done.
It's really important. They know who you are and what your project is, and the more kind of pride of ownership you can give them about the project that they're working on, the more interested they are in being your voice. Yeah, agreed.
So I mean, just my opinion is I think we need to take a better look at what optimal staffing might be. Okay. And maybe it is adding another, where we generate another $5 million, or whatever.
The other part is that we struggle on managing the grant when it comes in.
Yeah,
and completing the project on time. So it's not. I agree with you. We should look at the whole entire system, though. And I think right now with John's team put together a workflow system that allows us to track grants a little bit better. Even for like myself and Mark, we're constantly looking at the matching dollars, which is an issue. So, but I think, but anyway, I think it's an unbelievable start. It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, I also want to tell you, one of the things we are concerned when we look at risks for the department going forward, there's a lot of compliance responsibility.
Oh,
that
sure,
we have in
yeah.
managing this
Yeah.
portfolio, which is something that I can see us needing additional capacity to help support. We want to make sure we stay in compliance and that long term we don't have any issues when it comes down to
Yeah.
close that off.
I mean, the success creates work.
These kinds of issues,
Right,
sure.
yeah.
Lewis, the stamp program that we're gonna look into,
Mhm.
the 5-year plan, that would incorporate this as well, right?
It could. Yeah, well, remember, as I had mentioned before, this would include that, certainly. And you will be engaged. All the city council members will have a one-on-one interview, if you will.
But that would be included as well. When they
You
look
bet.
at everything, that might be a recommendation.
It may be like, where are some growth areas?
Right.
And this, they'll look at these numbers and say, this could be a growth area. If it offsets too, I always look at, if it offsets potentially some operating costs, or if it gets us capital like equipment that we typically
Yep.
would not have bought without the grant. But you're right, yeah.
Any other questions from council? Thank you, John.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
very much. I really
Thank you, Mr.
appreciate the
Kingsley.
support
Thanks,
very
John.
much.
Mr. Hopkins, you're up.
You look so enthused.
What's that?
You look so enthused.
Deep in thought.
Thank you. All right. Good evening, everybody. So I wanted to start out with just a brief overview of our staff as well. This is an org chart. I know it's kind of hard to see, but it was,
Kingsley,
it's
John. Go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry.
all right.
You flying a plane?
I'll wait for it.
And-
We'll just wait a second.
What's
I just want
undivided?
to ask him a question because he's getting ready to leave, and I have a question. I don't know if it's you or Dave.
It's called undivided attention.
Is it private?
I'm gonna ask Dave before. If you're, I'm gonna ask when he's done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So this is a copy of our org chart. We have about 100 employees in the Public Works Department, 12 reporting supervisors. We handle everything from engineering, traffic signals, building electric, Humor Park, the wastewater plant, the city's fleet, recreation and neighborhood programs, trash and recycling, the city's parks, conservation management, all the public building, property maintenance, highways, and underground utilities. So it's a busy place.
Don't forget MS4.
We'll throw that in there somewhere. And usually I don't like wordy slides, but I think sometimes it's interesting to see what we own. We just own a lot of stuff. We're a small city with kind of big city assets and big city problems. I mean, just the sanitary sewer alone is 65 miles underground. These facilities were installed, 80, 90 years ago. They require all kinds of maintenance. We have 105 miles of road here, not including PennDOT roadways, that we maintain under a winter traffic services agreement. We have a pretty large fleet, large amount of signalized intersections. So, if you look at the sheer number of things we own and manage, and, I think we are very proud that we were able to implement the Cartograph asset management system. Every single one of these assets is included in there. It's managed cradle to grave. The staff uploads all the service reports. I mean, it was a huge undertaking to get done, but now that it's done, up and working, it's, everything is at our fingertips. I can pull up, if you ask me about an elevator, I can tell you who serviced it, when they serviced it. It's really a great program. So kind of building upon John's successes, because his team, and especially Trevor, have really done a bang-up job of bringing money into the city. And as a result, we have a pretty heavy workload of projects to manage. So these are on tap for 2025. We have money for roadway reconstruction. We'll be doing Safe Streets for All. We have the waterfront planning study. We're doing a bridge replacement project down at Humor Park at Abbott Street. We're doing a bridge project replacement over at Eastern Iron and Metal. We have all the park improvements, including Nescahoning Street. We're waiting for that grant to come in. We're replacing a sewer pumping station. Right now, all of our MS4 BMPs are under construction. We just finished Cheston School, and now we're working in Mock Chunk Park. We've been doing a ton of sanitary and storm sewer rehab. We're replacing the miter gates on the lock. The $1 million urban forestry grant that John mentioned, that's in full swing now, and I think it's making a huge impact on the West Ward neighborhood. I really do. I consider street trees not just environmental and beautification, but I do consider them economic development. I think it's a very important part of what we do, and we have a fantastic staff to help implement that. And we'll be working on the intermodal garage improvements. A number of these things are actually on the agenda for tomorrow night for approval, cranking out contracts and getting these guys started. We also have some programmatic priorities. When we sit down and, we meet every Wednesday at our staff meeting, and we talk about, what do we need to focus on? Where are the grants leading us? What types of grants are we looking for? And, based on a lot of input from the public too, increased pedestrian and vehicle safety is really a huge priority, and it's part of every project we do. We're always looking at how do we get the pedestrians safely from A to B. I think the more people that come to our city, they notice how walkable it is. I hear it all the time. People love the ability to walk around here, their access to parks and trails. I like it myself as a resident. I think Easton is really a cool place from that perspective. I'd really like to consider focusing on our underground utilities. We're nothing without them. It's the one thing that enables the growth and the density. And I think the city is getting good grades for the amount of money that we've committed to it. Compliance with MS4, that is very important. We just got issued our new permit. So we'll be continuing to build those facilities as time goes on. I think it's probably going to result in a request in a bump in staffing for our utility crew now that we have to maintain and verify all of those facilities. It's a huge undertaking.
When is that? When is the permit come up again, and they'll assess what we've done?
Well, that's a great question, because none of the permittees are really in compliance, and we're not in compliance, and we've been told we are way ahead of most of the permittees in our efforts. In fact, you may recall we even have a contract with Williams Township to look at expanding there. We have a contract with the school district. We contracted with the county. We're turning over every stone to find facilities to install. So I'm thinking that the new permit actually didn't contain any new language at all. It's really a redundant permit from the first one, and I think a lot of that is because the DEP, they can't go after everybody. That's not going to go over well. So I think in the next 5 years you'll probably see them more leaning toward enforcement if people don't progress in their efforts. So, but ours is good.
Effort.
Right. So, ours is, I forget what the effective date is. I think it's December 1st, but it's good for 5 years.
Okay.
So, so roadway reconstruction is also a major one of our priorities. We've been really kind of, held back a little bit by the work UGI is doing, because they often don't tell us where they're working, or they pop up, and we're not able to, and sometimes they even dig things up that we just paved with, and because they didn't have that particular street on a map. So
Do we have any kind of idea how far along they are? They're pretty far along. Last year they still had roughly 20 miles of road in the city to dig, and this year they did a lot. So their moratorium, if you guys recall, they're under a moratorium because of the Allentown home explosions. So they at the end of 26 they have to be done. So they have Sunset.
Yeah, so they have 2 more years, and they still have a lot of work to do. But they told me that they're planning on being done at least 9 or 10 months in advance, just to make sure they have some kind of cushion so they don't push up against that
that moratorium date.
That was my friend project up in Allentown.
What's that?
That was my friend's project up in Allentown. One of the guys that I work with. When they,
Oh, okay, when
Yeah.
they lost their
that was
homes.
something.
And the last programmatic priority is going to be sustainability and urban forestry. We have this new $1 million grant, and we have a second arborist on staff who, they're also doing conservation management. And when I get into my more budget-specific requests, we'll talk about sustainability and its importance and how, we are a platinum-rated city by the PML for sustainability. And I think as we continue to manage our climate action plan, I think that position is going to be very busy, and there's going to be a lot on their plate.
That's 2 full-times, right? You're 2 full-time foresters?
We do. One is
Okay.
fully grant funded. The other one's been on
Been
on
there
the
for a
city's
while, I
budget for a
remember.
while,
Yeah.
and he's funded in large part by our stormwater collections.
Okay.
So this is really just kind of an overview of our spending plan, which has remained basically flat from 2024. What I did was I just went through the budget and pulled out any real, I mean, if it was like $500, I didn't, but any real major cost increase that I'm recommending in the spending plan, I pulled out so we could talk about it. Obviously the staffing is a big one. We asked for a driver one laborer to assist with the increasing outdoor workload. I love all the ornamental, islands and medians we have in the city, but they are a lot of work to maintain. The parks guys can barely keep up with all the stuff they have to do, especially when you have a sort of a lot of sun, then a lot of rain, then a lot of sun, 2 pools, there's only 6 of them. So it's very difficult to manage all that with a staff that size, and having a driver one laborer position in the labor pool, that's a pool of guys that we can actually assign anywhere at any time, no questions asked. And it's, and the guys do a good job of sharing them when they need one. It's very helpful. We've asked for a sustainability coordinator to help at least take some of the workload off of me. The Nurture Nature Center they are a huge help to us, especially Dr. Kate Seaman. She's really wonderful, and they really do help us stay in compliance with the plan, keep up with the reporting responsibilities. But I think having someone on staff to begin looking at all sorts of issues, sustainability is a wide pool of best practices and managing, including stormwater and forestry and trails and outdoor recreation. So I think that'll be a valuable position. I bumped up the vehicle fuel budget. Our usage is up a little bit, and it's tough to tell where costs like that are going. Lately they seem to be maybe trending down a tad, but they were trending up when we were working on the budget. I asked for an additional $20,000 in our sewer crew repair budget. Those guys are almost digging every day at this point, and so we, the more work we can get done in-house, the less capital we have to spend and the less borrowing. So I see that as a really valuable investment for those guys. I asked for an increase in highway supplies, just things like you wouldn't think of, like brooms for the street sweepers, and the cost of these things is outrageous. What used to be maybe a $100, $200 mirror on a car is now $1,500. They're wired, they're heated. This stuff is just has gone up markedly. Humor Park maintenance, I added $8,000. There's just a lot of stuff going on down there. The park is busier than ever, which is great to see. People really enjoy it. Yep.
Mayor, where do we need to? I know when the discussion with Northampton County about the hydro plant down there was a lot of talk about dredging of the canal. Where are we at with that? Is that something that needs to be done? Do we have time?
So,
Budgeted?
well, that's one of our, that would be a grant priority for us to get that. I mean, the boat does scrape on the bottom, and unlike other canal towns like New Hope,
is one that regrets they ever lost their boat, and there's been a group down there, a friends group, that's been trying to get it back for 20 years, and it's just not going to happen. So I think maintaining those things is important. But yeah, dredging was going to be a concession made by New England Hydro, and now that they're moving more towards a state investment in the chain dam,
Yeah.
we'll have to seek alternative funds for that.
So, okay, so that is something that we have on the list. We just have to raise.
It's
some funds.
definitely a priority.
Okay.
We just need to raise funds for it.
What does something like that cost, Dave?
Well, it depends how much you do. The amount that we would need to do now, probably 300,000.
Okay.
It's
That's
it's
just dredging. That's not pulling the boat out or anything. It's just dredging.
It would be a combination of, they make bentonite blankets that you can use. Sometimes you gotta be careful when you dredge, because you don't wanna take the clay out, which is what keeps the water in. But it's just an arduous process.
Do we do it or do we outsource it?
We outsource it.
Off season, I guess we would do that on dry dock in time.
You would do it in the off season, and it's a lot of work too, because you have to crib the machine. Like, you can't put an excavator in there; it'll sink. So it's messy. It's everything. So that's something we're going to prioritize. Municipal building repairs, same thing. Our buildings are getting older. You know, we spend a lot in the fire stations. We spend a lot here in City Hall. And we are now looking at actually some strategic investing in upgrading lighting fixtures and whatnot, because the ROI is pretty quick on investments like that. So I'm waiting for a second proposal just for this building. And I'm going to come back to City Council with that outside of the budget to talk about, you know, if we invest X in upgrades, it'll pay itself off in, 12 to 15
He was
months.
at the pass punt and kick competition on Saturday.
Steve was.
Steve was a 3-time national champion for pass punt and kick.
Yeah.
3-time national champion.
You-
He was from Peabody.
No, Steve Searfoss, who's he's one of the lighting reps that came in, but he was
Ole Miss.
I thought it was Steve
he
Dixon.
played for Ole Miss, and then he played in the NFL for a season.
That's some good size to him.
Oh, wow.
Looks like he could probably play today.
Well, we don't want him to play
The
that.
Giants,
Yeah, he was everybody.
He said he would race you in the 40-yard dash.
Yeah, after I asked to race you.
sound like a tanker relay.
Frank's gonna drive. Have to get in a car.
I was just going to ask you to just kind of explain a little bit more about the wastewater treatment and how that's shared with the member municipalities and so forth.
Yeah, so with the wastewater plant, we generally get probably 10% ROI on anything. The way our contract works is they lease the plant from us, but we pay them a sewage fee. So we pay each other 4 times a year is basically what happens. And it's not always a wash, but most anything suggested for the wastewater treatment plant gets split among all the member municipalities based on how much flow they contribute to the plant. And so, so even though it's a complex relationship that we have, this is not all like city paying for this. We pay about 22% of.
We're the highest one, right?
We used to be. Palmer Township has exceeded. Believe
nice.
it or not. I don't know though. We've been adding population, so it depends.
Yeah.
It depends, but we're really
So
close.
have they.
Well, yes, that's true. But theirs is mostly warehouses. I don't know how
That's
much
true,
flow they
yeah.
produce.
Well, there's some apartment complexes.
So down at the wastewater plant, we blew through our repair budget this year, and so they're asking for another $75,000 with a $50,000 contingency, and that budget didn't really go up. So the approximate total that I'm asking for in increase is about $193,000, or roughly a 1.1% increase over 2024. And some of that we'll get back anyway through our arrangement with the sewer authority.
Has there ever been any discussion about getting, I see like the Peace Candle and the park maintenance fees, have we ever discussed getting sponsors perhaps? For even the parks or the Peace
We
Candle?
used to have an
itself?
Eastern Peace Candle committee that raised all the money, and then GDP vacated that committee, and the committee was made up mostly of city employees. And I remember Josie Small doing that auction every year, every other year.
Yeah, she did it every
And,
year.
and we sold replicas of the Peace Candle, and now GDP is using that. We gave the Peace Candle lighting to GDP about 10 years ago, and I'm not so sure it was a good idea at the time. We just couldn't get anybody to help us. So it was easier to give it to them. They do, for example, they do Small Business Saturday, and they do the candle lighting that night. And they make, for example, we pay the electricity for the candle, but they sell the candle lighting every night for $40.
Yeah.
And they get to keep that. We don't. It's a relationship that goes give and take.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, they bring a lot of grant money into the
Oh, yeah,
city and
absolutely.
projects
Yeah,
like that.
well,
But even
Buildings, trades involved with that too, right?
throughout my travels, I've seen parks elsewhere in the country that have like signage when you come in the entrance and say it's sponsored by, it might be a company or a foundation and things like that. I'm
Sure.
just curious. I mean, that may help with,
It's probably something we can
costs.
do better. Our sponsorships that we've had with St. Luke's and LVHN, they've paid for scoreboards.
I've
So-
seen that, yeah.
So it's
Let me jump in, because it's a delicate subject, because we looked at it closely, because it will come from my office for sure, and working with the solicitors. On any kind of sponsorships, especially for the examples you just gave, have gone through an RFP process. So we've sent out, and we said, hey, you can bid on this. With sponsorships, it's a little different. But it has to be consistent across the board.
Our solicitors are not real keen on sponsorships because the Midget Association used to do
Oh,
that,
God.
and they got in trouble by
Don't call them the midgets.
Little League. We don't call Little League any of these. We call it midgets.
Whoa.
And for example, the Fleas Club used to sponsor a team, and solicitors got upset because the Fleas Club doesn't allow women and doesn't allow minorities. And the Fleas Club
I
doesn't
mean, you
exist
could
anymore.
still put some parameters around that.
So,
It's
so
like,
we have.
even, we wouldn't want
Yeah, we're doing it right now for the
some
community
toxic
center.
business being like
We're
our
doing it for
Bacon
the community
Fest
center. We
sponsor.
expect to raise $3 million in the community center, and we have naming rights.
Yeah.
And if you want to name it, the Crystal Rose Community Center will $2 million. That's fine.
We'll take it.
I'm not saying that we're against them. I'm just saying it has to be controlled.
I understand that.
That's
yeah.
all. And so, to your point, we right now slowly, we do have in the last couple of years, we've put together a couple sponsorship opportunities for different programs. But it has to be clear, like how many, for example, are we looking for a gold sponsor, silver sponsor, and bronze, and maybe friends of the organization. All those are different, and maybe we may only have 2 here and multiple down here. So we've done that. So the short answer is yes, but we haven't expanded it.
Yeah, it's something I've noticed just in my travels lately, and it's been out of state mostly, and it's when you're going into a park, especially something like a Humor Park, it says like sponsored by, and I'm assuming it's probably a multi-year sponsorship because the signs were pretty nice in all cases, but it's something that might pad our expenses a little bit. Just a thought.
I agree.
No, I think there's definitely a role for that, and we should probably be doing more of it. And in answer to your question, I don't know what sponsorship they have for the Peace Candle.
They do the
They bid the light.
lighter. They bid the lighter. That usually gets about $350, $400, and then they do every lighting every night. They do it like I know. I do one for my mother and one for my father-in-law. So it's $80 a year they're getting from that,
Wow.
and but we pay for the electricity.
So the reason I asked Kingsley to come over, and he said it's actually both of you. Speaking of the alfresco dining, the Christmas Village, Garlic Fest, Clam Jam, everything we have, I'd like to see if you guys can get us. I'd like to see what we're spending versus what we're getting back.
Well, a lot of that is opportunity cost, right? So we spend an inordinate amount of time on event support, which not only it's not only the overtime that you might see during the event itself, but I mean Bacon Fest, we lose three full working days for 20, 30 guys. So, you know, the Winter Village is another one. It's very labor intensive. So we focus on basically, you know, we're
Right.
on just getting it done. This year we got lucky. We have a couple extra days in between. Last year we came skidding in like at the last hour because we were so compressed between, you know, you have that day to clean up Bacon Fest and then you got to get the candle up immediately and it's just, you know.
The budget that I presented does include some chapter 285 where it does our fees. You will see that some of them, for example, we will be charging next year $50 per business license for a temporary business license so you talk about a group like Bacon Fest had 150 vendors times $50 is $7,500.
So we're not doing any of that now?
We do some of that, but not a lot.
I thought everybody
We put all of our parking in the garages at $20.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So
we
the-
brought in $38,000 for Bacon Fest. We probably spent about $45. So we lost about $7,000. But the amount of people who came into the city of Easton that day and will come back on Saturday and Sunday. But you know, and I'll talk about my good friend Mick. I mean, he sold 6,000 burgers this year.
Yeah.
He made 1,000 more.
Well,
And they're $1,500. They're $15 each.
And we have a great relationship with GDP, and as Crystal said earlier, Councilwoman Rose, they do a lot for the community. But I definitely think it's something to look at. And then going past GDP, Clam Jam, Garlic Fest, that's separate. That's,
Well,
you know,
events,
individual.
you know, events, a lot goes into event support. You know, parking postings can take someone half a day, dropping off barricades, picking up barricades. It's just, it's a lot of, you know, it's a lot of that type stuff, stage setups and delivering equipment to everyone and getting
Absolutely.
the trash cans and.
Garbage collection.
No, I'm not, listen,
We plan on having a
It's
meeting
hard.
with all the people who are the leaders, the chairpeople of the committees next year. I was at the Bacon Fest logistics meeting, and I think Marcy was kind of upset. For example, it's one thing to talk about our costs, but what about the cost to the local merchants who lose parking Friday and Saturday night because of Bacon Fest? And I hear that every time I come down. So they want to put their tents up on Friday in the Mesa parking lot, the parking lot the city owns next to Mesa. And I'm like, no, you can't do that. You got to do it on Saturday morning. So we allowed them to do it this year. But next year, no, they're renting those tents. You want to rent me the tent? You come in Saturday morning at 6 o'clock.
They did not get back to me, and so it's not something that I'm going to forget. But they should set up at 4 a.m., 3 a.m., 2
who
a.m.
didn't get back to you? And
The GDP.
Okay.
So they're supposed to get back to me. I'm going to follow up. But I mean, it's a cost to have labor to come out that early. But it should be.
And I'm not minimizing, anything. I'm not blaming or nothing. I just like to see the numbers. When I look at the budget, and Miss Councilwoman Rose and I have been meeting and going over it, and you look, and every year our expenses are going up, but our revenues are not. And then I look at, well, how much of a loss are we taking? 7,000. It's.
I think events are a little harder to quantify though, because what we gain from a tourism perspective
Exactly.
and also for our businesses in the area, it really highlights us. I mean, I can't I volunteered both days of Bacon Fest. I couldn't tell you how many people I met who it was their first time here, and they live
In 20 years.
They live in a
20 miles
driving
out
distance too, in New
further.
Jersey or right outside the Lehigh Valley.
Friday night I was at 3rd and Ferry Street before Bacon
Unbelievable.
Fest, and I went up. A lady who lives in Easton came down and asked me if I would go up and say happy birthday to a guy who was 70 years old. And I went up, and they're from New York. They were staying at the Grand Estonian for 2 nights to come to Bacon Fest. That you can't quantify, and it's really hard to quantify that. But at Winterfest, I was there one year for the candle lighting. I met people from Colorado, California, and Nevada. I mean,
And I don't disagree. And I'm not saying there has to be something. I think though we should look at it because let's be honest. The ones running all of these groups and GDP they're making a good amount of money.
right?
They're making a
GDP
nice amount of
expects to
money.
make $100,000 a year on Bacon Fest.
Frank,
Now,
At least we're getting some of that return back from their operations, though. For a for-profit festival, that would be what I would be a little bit more
Well, that's
concerned
why
about.
I like to
Are
see
we
'em all.
paying certain things like insurance and things like that? I mean, not that they're not beneficial as well, but it's something.
well, we are
They're not
going to
allowed
try to
in our
firm that up
rules.
next year. For example, Bacon Fest is done by Joe Moranville, and she does it on her own and with her
Garlic.
committee.
Garlic
But
Garlic Fest.
That's Garlic Fest, but we used to pay for one of the bands. We don't pay for the band anymore because she won't give us the financials. Now I know that initially she did not make money; she lost money. Came out of her own quadrant bookmark. But now I think if she's not making money, she's crazy because she should be. Same way with Mike Paquetto on Clam Jam. Those two are the only two that we have that are still private.
And Clam Jam's
And
grown.
Clam Jam has grown a lot.
What I wanted to say, Frank, we, because it's not just economic development or DPW, it's also fire, police, it's everyone, IT.
Absolutely.
We've been keeping score, so to speak, record of the expenses.
So can we get a report?
We can.
Oh,
We can,
that's
gen-
all,
we
yeah,
can
that's
generate
just
one.
to look at. I mean,
That's
we're debating it now for really no reason. I just like to see it. There might be nothing to talk about, or
No, there's
maybe
something
there
to
is
talk
something
about.
to talk about.
I mean, I think the city. I was talking to Mick on Sunday. I had a burger, and he said to me, he says, "Oh, the city make money this weekend." I said, "No, we lose money."
We'll do it.
He was shocked to find out that we lose money. He thought the city was making the money, not
Everybody does.
GDP.
There's a misconception.
And my
And he was willing
Well,
to.
well,
And he was willing to say, whatever it costs, charge me.
And my issue, and I'm not looking at, and again, I don't know what I'm talking about because I don't see the numbers. I'm not looking to make a profit, but I would
No,
love to
just
consider
covers-
breaking even to cover our
Yes,
costs.
and
So
that's
why don't
what
we,
plan on doing.
we'll see if we can at least update, it's usually a succinct, like, paragraph.
Yeah, yeah.
We could break it down to that.
that's
And
fine.
maybe tomorrow, under a finance report, Mark can give an update on, you're not
Just
here?
so you know, Councilman, after every
Then I'll do it.
event,
What are you doing today?
that Tuesday at our staff meeting, we do go over those numbers.
Absolutely.
Well,
And this year was like $45,000 or $42,000 and $38,000. $38,000 in revenue from parking and $42,000 in
That's
expenses.
because we upped it.
why don't we
Yeah,
do
we
that?
upped it to $20.
I'll do that under my report tomorrow, just, Bacon Fest.
Tomorrow or the next meeting, if Mark, whatever, it's fine. I just want to.
We'll just, we should
Yeah.
make that a reoccurring thing, like, after
Absolutely.
each event, we can give an update.
I met with Jared and Teresa Hogan, the president of GDP, a week or two ago, and we agreed that every quarter, under one of my reports, I would have them come in and just talk about what they do, because they do a lot of great things. We don't know a lot. I don't think majority of us here know what they're doing, maybe with the exception of Crystal, who's a part of it. But they did some good things that I didn't know of, and he was telling me, and I said, "Wow, I had no idea." So we're going to bring them in to update and show numbers and different things, as well. So.
I want to
think
go
that's
back
good.
to what Crystal was saying. And Crystal, just so you know, I've been working with Councilman Pinnabone. We did put a sponsorship package together for the park improvements for a handicap playground. Now, what I do want to say on that is that, just like we've been talking, like you and I have been talking a lot about, communications, and we need an individual. We talked about grants today and how that may also then mushroom into, more staff and more overhead, et cetera, just to manage everything. It's the same thing with sponsorships. That's why I've been trying to, at least, I'm not saying no to it, because I think it's a good idea.
I understand the time commitment
Yeah.
involved as well, and you also have to balance is that time commitment work.
Like David
Right.
and his department, they're not marketers or,
Mhm.
or salespeople, and that's why it's been small. And even the idea for the fundraising for the community center, the mayor and I have been talking about, and when the mayor is driving this, forming a committee, and these are folks that can, are involved in the community, not necessarily us. We just have to, I think, move slowly with that as well.
The community center, we already got our first $50,000 donation to name the computer room after the Easton Lions Foundation. And we'll go after the Registered Service Club foundations, and we'll go after the big ones and the big companies like Crayola and Victaulic and Easton area. But we'll also go after Air Products and some of the ones that are in the Lehigh Valley. Air Products has been very, very good to GEDP. We'd like to get some of that funding, and we'll also go for an RCAP if we can get Fadia in here right after the Thanksgiving holiday. We could bring Fadia in and talk to her about getting online. Maybe we can get $1 million. We just lost. There's no one, the press isn't here, so losing.
We're online.
Yeah, we're on,
We're live.
No, we're not.
yes, we are.
Say cheese.
There's no green lights. None of the lights are on.
We're supposed to be live.
The election from Tuesday, the big loss was Wild and Casey because they had promised
Oh,
$1
boy.
million. $1 million is a lot of money to go towards the community center. It takes it from $6 million to $5 million. So we got to look to Uncle Josh for as much as we can get.
Well, Mayor.
I mean, if
ju-
you have
just
ideas,
look-
certainly willing to work with you and put something together.
Yeah, I'm
and-
happy to
and-
help
and-
too.
okay.
So
And that
Great.
sponsorship
meeting.
package
Okay.
has to include a time date. Because I was on the committee that never got off the ground to raise money for the Cunningham Stadium, which I still think you could raise millions of dollars for that, and the school board just chose not to do that. Or I shouldn't say the school's administrative staff. And she's no longer there, but you know, there's a software engineer out in California making millions of dollars a year who would gladly donate and make something with his name on it at Cunningham Stadium. Maybe he was a big football star, maybe he wasn't, maybe he was just a student, maybe he was in the band. But when the very first meeting I went to, they had the press box on there, and the press box was named for Parnell Lewis and Joe Prentice. No, not Joe Prentice. Somebody from WEST. Anyway, but there was no
Ed
sunset.
Laubach.
So
yeah, you absolutely need a
You gotta have a
sponsorship
sunset.
term within.
Yeah.
because then you can go back and get more money.
well,
Right.
or you can at least, if somebody did something really good in your community, you can say, "Oh, we're not going to." Dr. Cunningham was the superintendent for 60 years. I doubt you're going to have anybody name the stadium after that, but you're locked in now. You named it Cunningham Stadium and you didn't put any sunset on it.
Right. Mayor, just in case we are live, I just want to be clear. It is sad that we lost Susan and Bob Casey, but you and I do have a meeting with Congressman-elect McKenzie coming up, so hopefully we won't lose that $1 million.
Well, like I will tell you, you could say what you want. Mr. McKenzie can be really, really effective in legislation, but when it comes to grant money, seniority rules. Believe me. Same way out in Harrisburg. Lisa Buscola and Bob Freeman have been there forever, and when they say something, they need something for their community, they get it. So-
I'll be reporting on grant money tomorrow. My report that Susan and Bob got us. You're right.
There's a whole bunch of lights going on over there.
That's the headlights.
They're headlights.
They playing
They're
flag.
working.
They're
They're
Playing
working
laser tag. They're playing laser tag over there.
on the scaffolding. Very dangerous.
Thanks for coming.
Questions?
So, what's that?
Good move.
Do you guys have any questions?
Dr. Ruggles.
I got several.
All right.
Sorry. I'm starting at, let me make sure I get the right line here. Probably a very simple answer. It's the building rent. It's a 101-5052-44383.
That's a line item that I actually don't budget, so I'm gonna have to defer to Lewis and Mark on that one.
Sure.
Well, we're budgeting $154,000, and nothing before is even close to that. And I'm just wondering what it's for. I mean, we haven't even spent any money this year on it.
You're right, and when this budget was put together, we had some prospects, and so we will have to probably make adjustments on that, so we'll take a look at that line item.
The other one right on that same page is the municipal building, it's gas. And I noticed you mentioned something in your remarks about fuel. But again, it's just something that stuck out to me. Currently, we had, as of August, $24,477 for gas.
Mm-hmm.
If I project that, that would come out for an entire year, just keeping that same, would come out to $36,715. But we're budgeting $60,000 for it. And, I mean, I understand gas might go up,
Well, but we
But-
also use it.
that's almost double.
Well, we had an extremely warm winter last year, and we didn't really use a whole lot of fuel.
And no snow.
We're gonna get a lot this year.
That's what,
So I,
You won a lot.
those, I mean, you're right. Sometimes, you have to, like, I look at rising cost, and then I look at usage in the past. Like, back in 2023, we budgeted, hang on here, I lost.
75,000.
Yeah, so we're kind of all over the map. And although the 23 actual is not on here, so I don't know where that ended up. Then we were at 63,000. And then if you look at August year to date last year, we were close to double where we are. And I think I actually talked to you, Mark, about that. We were going to see if maybe something got billed somewhere, because it doesn't make any sense. Because the past 2 winters have been relatively
Really mild, yeah, nothing.
relatively mild. So, but in the August year to date last year, we were so much higher, and I don't know if I trust that $24,000 actual number. It seems very low to me. But we can certainly, I mean,
It's tough, I'd rather over budget on some of these line items than under budget, because then you're scrambling. These are difficult numbers.
Under budget revenues, over budget expenses.
What's that?
Our motto has always been under budget revenues and over budget.
Yeah, but over budget realistically.
Yeah, realistically,
Yeah.
you're right.
well,
Okay.
even on the vehicle fuel, if you remember, a bunch of years ago, we had been under budgeted, and I think the fuel had a massive increase. And I remember we had to scramble
Oh,
to
yeah, we
find.
gotta find the money.
Yeah.
So, why don't we just take a note, and then, we'll look at it, yeah.
Take a look at it.
So the other question that I have is a couple pages after that. We go to 101 60. These numbers are getting smaller and smaller. My eyes are getting worse and worse.
What's the department type?
6060 dash 04370.
Is it
It's,
5060?
Repairs, maintenance, services.
Where's that?
Distribution.
Oh, you're with the utility crew. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, there it is.
Again, if I'm looking at what we spent so far this year, 101,000. If I project that out, that goes out to 151,000, but we're budgeting 175,000.
Right, because
And all previous years, we've been down at the 150 level.
but costs are going up. That was one of the line items I covered in this budget notes slide.
Is this 151?
No, this is 101.
Yeah, that's a. I understand costs are going up, but that's a big jump.
What's that?
13% jump. I think it's out of the ordinary,
And-
given the prices we've seen.
I mean, if they don't use it, I mean, we can look at it, but I'm almost positive last year, the reason we did that was because, where's the,
Last year, we were under a little bit. I mean, so yeah, we had a $6,000 increase year over year in August, but
What is it?
this is
Maintenance services?
this is a $24,000 increase.
well, it's 20.
Just seems like there's
If you,
$15,000 there that is a little bit over.
well, we could cut the ask in half and make it 10 and then see where we land. I'm fine with
The
doing
problem
that.
with doing that is that in the middle of the year, we may not have the money. And then to do a budget transfer, you don't have the money, you're sunk. We happened to us with the gasoline budget line in a couple years ago, when gas peaked at $5 a gallon, and we didn't have the money. We had to go looking for it.
Maybe we could regroup and answer that question a little bit better, just in case I'm guessing we're seeing increases in some of these repairs, so maybe we can give some examples.
It's actually, the materials are getting out of control, even like stone for backfill. Like everything is
Oh,
just,
yeah. the
All right,
stone.
so we have let's go back. It's a 12.9% increase. So are we seeing like a 12 to 13% increase then?
You're seeing way more than that.
I mean, that's the answer. I mean, but maybe we can give some examples coming back, just because it's like, this is too important to just say, well, this looks like it's high. Let's give some example. We can do that. We'll give some examples and some of the material that we purchase in this line item. Because one of the things you always ask me for is the breakdown in this line, in these lines. So we can do that. Let's look at it, and then we'll point to some examples.
The other question I have, and this appears several different times, is the electricity. And I understand costs go up, but if we look at that line item just above that, that previous one, we're currently at $5,079. If I project that out, that's $7,500 for the year. Okay, and we're budgeting 11,900.
No, so is this as of month end August?
Could have been,
Yeah, that's
So then you still have, so you have a third of the year left.
right. So you take whatever's there, divide it in half, and then add that half to what's there. So you come up with about 7,500 and each of the electric costs are like that. If we go through each one of the electric costs that are in the budget, they all are coming out much high, what I consider much higher than what our current usage is. And I wouldn't think that our electric is going to change a lot,
I think
We can look at it, but if you look at, that number has been the budget since 23, 24, 25, and I'd have to go back and look at the actual, but, a lot of the time, and it's not because we don't look at the number, it's more that if you can remain flat and not get caught with a budget that's too low, we didn't spend it, we didn't spend it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like we take that and just use it for something else. But 11,900 in this particular example has been the budget. Mark only went back to 2023. I'm guessing it's been like that for.
Oh, I see. All right. Well, why don't we? Because that's a good point. We'll look at all the electrical line items. We may file.
I mean,
Dr.
I don't mind it being up a little, but when it's up this much, it takes money away from other things that we might want to do.
Dr. Ruggles is always famous for finding those little nuggets. This might be one of them.
Okay.
I'm still waiting on Frank. I thought he was coming on strong, but he hasn't found anything yet.
Well, myself and Councilwoman Rose have been really looking at the pool, so we'll mention that tomorrow night.
No, I'm waiting to hear Councilwoman.
Pools are
Rose's
tonight.
presentation.
Pools are tonight.
Well, I just got the email today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we asked
We
for
couldn't go
info
through it
a
yet.
couple weeks ago.
I think there's a lot of fluff in that city administrator position.
The guy's building McMansion up on College Hill. He needs the money.
Disturbing the neighborhood. I think Mark could do both jobs at the same price.
Well, it worked for communications, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
So, it's not a lot. It's
Yeah.
only $10,000, I understand. But in the highway street cleaning,
Mhm.
vehicle parts, can't we take that out of MS4?
Some of it, and we do.
I mean, the whole 10,000, can't we take it out of MS4?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Why don't we do that?
Well,
Because we do streets that don't go into the.
MS4 is the way the 265 fund works. We assign percentages based on the amount of the cost that could be attributed to stormwater. So, street sweeping, while it serves a stormwater function, I don't know, and we did it like 5 years ago. Like, how we assigned a percentage of the utility crew is assigned to that fund, and a percentage of the street sweeping is assigned to that fund. But that takes care of itself on the back end, Mark, doesn't it?
Yes.
Like the assignment of those costs. So I think
in general, a portion of that cost will be assigned to the 265 fund.
Okay.
So, but I don't know what that number is. I'm gonna say we probably charge off 30% of the sweeping budget.
I would take that percentage up as high as we could possibly take it.
Now you sound like us.
Just
behind-
my opinion.
You sound like us behind the scenes.
But
Now we can look at it.
what are we gonna cut from that budget then?
We don't. What we do is
No, but what, if you spend more on this, on supplies, what do you gotta cut something?
No,
No,
no, that-
If you're coming out of MS4,
Right.
yeah, we're allocating it somewhere else.
like what you don't see, like for instance, you'll see the full cost of the sewer crew in my budget, but in reality,
Right.
X is getting
Sure.
reimbursed through and I don't know where that number comes in. Like, where do we take in the revenue from the 265 fund? That might be in the administrator's budget or. So yeah, so even if we add that, the percentage of it is going to come
Okay.
back. So
the next one that I have is under parking facilities.
okay,
So it's 1015068, I think. There's an overtime line there that both last year, August year-to-date, and this year, August year-to-date, are zero. And we have budgeted there $8,000. And, I mean, what is that for? I'm not sure.
well, my guess is that was budgeted to cover the overtime for the state theater shows, and so theater
We never had those before?
I don't know where the overtime gets charged to. I think what happened was the intent was to have a line item, because what we wanted to do was to always track special events overtime, because if you look at in my other budgets, you know, there's an overtime line and then there's a special events overtime line. So when they do payroll, I'm not sure, but that was the intent of that.
So where was it pulled out of before, I guess, would be my question. I mean,
Overtime in public works.
in Public Works. Okay.
Overtime.
I didn't go back to see if that went
Overtime.
down by $8,000 or
Overtime,
not.
overtime,
but
overtime.
I'll take a look later.
Dr. Eccles, we'll note that and go back and take a look at the
Okay.
history. But we have to go back to 901 because we just started this 101 fund.
Dave, under municipal building repairs, is 500 building included in that? So that 10,000 that might be over budgeting for fuel. I see your 10,000 municipal building repairs coming in higher than that. God forbid, but when I look at the fire stations and then the 500 building, there's a real good possibility you'll overspend there.
You never know.
Yeah.
Easy.
That's it. And I'm not arguing with you. I'm fine with 10,000, but it just seems really low with the cost of everything, and supplies and everything.
Well, a lot of times we're able to do it in-house ourselves. That really helps instead of farming it out. But a lot of that is contractual. So, you know, we have a contractor that comes in to handle HVAC, the elevators, the generators,
Right.
you know, all that good stuff. And you know, the elevator, for instance, we're just repairing in this garage. That was a $50,000 repair.
Mark, what is Capitol Riverwalk garage total? I don't know, we don't have a Capitol Riverwalk. Riverwalk was down where they're building a new watermark.
Yeah, that was a carryover. It looks like we had some budget in there for 24 for this year, but we didn't budget anything forward going forward.
We budgeted $20,000. I don't know how I missed it last year. Okay.
Anything else?
Sorry. This one I think is my biggest one, Louis, so.
Yeah. I know.
Absent the two that I already talked to you
Oh,
about.
okay.
But,
All right.
if we go to the highways, and again, this is 111. I don't know if we're getting into that or not, but
It's on the revenue.
111 fund.
Okay.
606, 6063-04, 361, this is electricity again. I assume these are the streetlights.
That is the streetlights.
Okay. That to me should be something that's pretty constant as the year goes on, right? Well, right now we have expended in August 324,000 roughly. Again, if I extrapolate that out, that comes out to $487,288. We're budgeting $646,000. I understand that comes out of liquid fuels, but it's money, right? Not quite 200,000, but about $180,000 more than our extrapolated number. And electricity can't be going up by that much.
No, but I think and you're right, we can definitely drop that, but the thinking is whatever you don't spend just becomes fund balance because it can't ever be used for anything else. It can only be used for eligible liquid fuels expenses.
Right, but I mean, we've used liquid fuel for other things other than the lights. I mean, we use
it for salt, traffic signals, streetlights, and capital, heavy highway capital purchases.
Right. Yeah. So I mean,
it's.
I mean, if we have that for heavy capital highway, then money that we take out of general fund that goes in to pay for that heavy capital highway doesn't have to go there. You know, I mean, the money is the money. I mean,
well, we max out our liquid fuels. There's a 20% cap, so no matter where that money is, you're always going to be capped at 20%, which is why when we do buy a piece of heavy highway equipment, we amortize it over
Right.
years to stay under that cap, so we can buy as much stuff with liquid fuels as possible. So in a sense, you're right. It could be over budgeted, but if we don't spend it, it goes right back into the fund balance and just used next year. We buy salt with it or whatever.
you know, when we're going to buy a heavy piece of equipment, you know,
Can we buy rain?
Mayor, I have no,
Louis,
I have no comment.
we can adjust that down. It's really not.
Yeah,
I'm not sure about that. I just don't know that requirements for liquid fuels. I know that the light street lighting comes out of that, but I didn't know all of that. But it seems to me that if this is what we're going to actually spend, I mean, let's just say it's $500,000, pumping it up a little bit. We actually spend $500,000 on it, but we're budgeting 646 or whatever. We got $146,000 sitting there. You know, yeah, it goes into a fund balance, but I mean, it does. When we're budgeting, it doesn't seem like that's the right thing to do.
But we should be able to. We know how many streetlights we have multiplied by $15 a month, and we should be able to come times 12.
I think we're on the same page from what I hear with you, Dr. Ruggles. Like, we're on the same page. It appears to be over budgeted. So, all right, so we can allocate those expenses to another line item within the budget, or we save it for the fund balance, knowing that we have a 5-year capital plan, and we may have other large equipment that's coming up that we may need to use that for.
Right.
Okay, so why don't we just, before we say, hey, we found $200,000 here, let's look at, we'll regroup with
The other concern about liquid fuels is that we are quickly outgrowing our allotment with expenses. So we're probably, I forget where within the next 5 years, we'll be spending more out of the fund than we get on an annual basis. A lot of that has to do with the growing EV market, and they haven't found a funding replacement. They've been looking at tolling. They've been looking at all types of different scenarios where they can keep replacing liquid fuels for us. But with salt going up, the cost of vehicles going up, cost of electricity going up, we're going to outpace our allotment.
Have road repairs gone up too? Asphalt, et cetera?
Oh my God, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think, into the future too, and again, I don't know what the procedure is, but as we replace streetlights with
More
with
efficient.
LEDs,
yeah, I mean that should bring the cost down.
it will.
Yeah, and so while that we have revenue maybe going
Where-
down, but the expense may be going down also.
Where MedEd gets us on that is that most of our streetlights are unmetered. So when they go in front of the PUC for the tariff, I think it's,
Bad word.
switching over is like $2 a month. And if you look at the ROI, because they have an assigned remaining service life calculation.
Mhm.
So they relamped in 2011 and did mostly 150 watt high pressure sodium, which is, let's say it's $15 a month on the tariff.
Mhm.
If these lights have any remaining service life and we try and go and replace them, they make you pay off. They make you pay off the service life first. Then they charge you for the install, and then you only make $2 a month back from the tariff. So it's like we almost have to wait until these are at the end of their
Right.
Lifestyle.
life,
Yeah.
and then it might pay to look at it. But they did not give us a huge break on the tariff as much as, because it's not metered. So
Right.
I guess the PUC gave them that latitude. If it were metered and we had those savings, we would save a ton of money.
Yeah.
It's a cash cow for them.
Going back to Frank's point, this is the kind of thing that we're gonna look at with this consultant study. We have to really look into this, since it's a 5-year plan. Marry the capital. Yeah, marry the capital budget with all of this stuff that we're talking about, and there's a lot.
Councilman Pinabel, can we talk about your pool questions? Because Dave's here today, I don't want him to come
Yeah,
back.
I mean, it's just,
Oh, you just got the email today?
yeah, so I got the email but it looks like, just on the face, I've been looking at it for a few months.
Who's the email from?
This is the YMCA,
The YMCA to Kevin McCarthy to me.
Gotcha.
attendance totals.
Okay.
But looking at it, we're losing a lot of money every year on the pools, and I know there's a big
$100,000 a year.
and there's a big bill coming up for Hyle Pool. Then there's going to be a bigger bill coming up for Eddyside Pool. I'd like to look at it. I'd like to maybe we form a committee with the public. And I know there's just bringing this up is going to be a lot of flack, but I think it's worth looking at. Do we still operate 2 pools? We're operating odd and even days. The people in College Hill that I have talked to over the summer about the pool issues, who really are involved with the pools, they really love Hyle because of the lanes and everything, and we're like one of the only pools that have it. People from College Hill can get to Hyle. People from West Ward and Southside can get to Hyle.
Kids can't get to Highland.
That's the point I'm talking about.
From where?
From College Hill, they gotta walk.
Yeah, the kids are.
Yeah, but they got but
However, this is the data that's missing. Because I briefly looked at what was sent over today. I didn't get a lot of time to dig in, admittedly. It shows daily numbers. I don't know. I really wanted to see Hyle versus Eddyside Pool, those attendance numbers, because I wouldn't want to take something
Right.
away that the community's using. However, I don't know what those numbers are. It's showing a combined data. And I think what we asked for was to see those 2 separate pools isolated in the
And
data.
the Y will have to, if that's the type of data you need, and the Y would have to do that separately starting this summer. They're
Well,
not doing
they
it
should
now.
know what days of operation that
That's
The
true.
attendance,
Up
you look
in-
at attendance.
I don't know.
I have that data up until
Okay.
2021, when they switched their data, the way they collected data. But I mean, if it,
But it would even
But a
be
lot of
helpful
things
to
have changed
know.
since
I can
2021,
see
right?
the dates. I can see the dates in what was sent today. So if at least, I mean, it's going to take some time to really tabulate all of that, unfortunately, because they didn't. They
what
sent PDF.
what year did they send you?
This past year. 24.
I think
So-
it's actually I thought it said 21.
So
to
with the pools
24.
rotating, if you look at the even days, that's Eddyside, and the odd days are Hyle.
Okay.
So you could split them out because they were never open simultaneously.
Right.
And I think about 5 years ago, correct me if I'm wrong here, we did a public meeting on the pools.
Mr. Brown, that was 2007.
21 to 24.
That was the first time we did it. That was over there.
And just back to what I was saying, I'm not saying we have to close them down, but we're losing $100,000 approximately every year on these pools. We have two major upgrades that need to be done to both pools, and the majority of the community is unhappy with the current way we're operating the pools on the odd and even days. So I think it's something to take a look at.
I think we look at the lifeguards too, because that's one of the driving points too. Keeping the lifeguard.
That is
on-
your cost, you
Yeah.
know.
It is the cost.
3
But,
years ago, we were paying $9 an hour, and
Now
now
we're
we're
seven-
paying 15.
but the problem is Phillipsburg and Allentown are playing 17 to 19. So, you know, it's not that I don't see how we can lower it. But all I'm saying is I think it's time to take a look at it and make some decisions. It might stay the same. Maybe we, you know, open up one pool full time and one on odd even days. I don't know. But with a $100,000 loss a year and people upset about the way we're operating it anyway, I think it's time to take a look at it.
My concern is more long-term, these upcoming larger
Right.
maintenance costs of both pools. Do we put ourselves in danger of not being able to afford even keeping one open?
Right.
I don't know if that will be the case or not.
Well, the good news is that, remember, we had talked about bringing in a professional consultant, so he's
Yep.
coming in this week. He's going to give us a proposal to really look at the life cycle of all the things. I mean, the bathhouses are from the 60s.
Yeah.
Yep.
All the piping is from the 60s. The tanks are from the 60s. And, well, the one newer one, I think, at Eddyside was from the 80s or 90s? 80s. So it's everything there is just aging, and there's just a lot of risk. And the other problem is, you know, you're only getting 75 days of use. You know, so is there something more valuable the public would like to see? And I think that could have been a strategic error the first time it was suggested that the pools were closed, because no one was offered anything in return.
Right.
If, for instance, and this is just complete brainstorming,
Yeah.
if we turned Eddyside into a top-notch sports facility with pickleball courts and basketball courts and
Sprinkler park.
all
Splash
sorts
pad.
of things
Yeah.
to do, you know, does that become more palatable, where at $100,000 a year, you're paying it off in 5 years?
Right.
You know, I don't know.
And we can use savings and give out grants to redo sidewalks in the neighborhoods. I mean, there's so many things we can do, and I'm not saying we will, but I definitely think we want to look at
What
it.
I
might,
think the other piece that comes up too is we're doing waterfront planning, and that really is a piece of the waterfront. So I think that's why it's also
The right time.
the right time to maybe have some, or at least start these conversations, because we have a consultant looking at.
We were traded with the state for Jacobsburg Park. We owned Jacobsburg Park at one time. We got Eddyside.
You were talking about hard to
We
get
don't
to.
have that.
Well, I'm just saying, I mean, back then it was the cities in your rural, your Palmer Township, Ferguson were rural. Bushkill Township was rural, so they gave it to the cities. And the city.
so
bought
you know
Jacobsburg
what,
Park.
maybe if we can get an expert report, and he could maybe project out what he believes are going to be our really big hurdles in the next few years, and then maybe we go to an architect and say, look, if you were going to do something with this property, what would you do? And talk to the public about it and see.
And the fact is, kids don't swim the way they used to. You don't have the kids going to the pool every day like they used to when I was a kid.
No.
When I was a kid, we walked the Highland Pool every day.
Every day.
Well, we also
Right
had
down
like
Line
one
Street.
parent, like usually the mom staying home back then. Not too many people can
Right,
afford
exactly.
to have, you know, a person staying home any longer. So I think that also cuts down
That's
on
true.
probably our midweek
Yeah.
usage.
I'm just saying, there's an evolution that takes place in society, just like it does in the city's building fabric. And that evolution over time, things change. You know, everybody used to have the American dream of owning a home. Today, young kids don't want to own a home. They don't want the grass cutting. They don't want the snow shoveling. They don't want it. They want to let
Don't
somebody
want
like Pinnable do it.
They don't want Frankie charges.
But I will say that because of our swimming program,
That's absolutely right.
we have a lot of kids
Yes.
that use the pool, and I know my grandkids were there every day at the pool, you know, and they when they're not with Slim Club, they either go to Eddyside or to Heil. I mean, so I think, you know, that is something that we have had, I think, has been very successful as far as, you know, that program is concerned, and getting kids. I mean, you know, it's
Not to
a
say-
good thing that kids learn how to swim. You know,
Oh, it's great.
You
They
know,
don't learn about.
they
They
don't
don't learn
learn
it
in high school anymore, right?
I
They don't
think,
learn it in school anymore.
I think the programs are great.
I think
The
Pinnable
offers we have.
canceled that.
No, sir. I wanted to redo the pool.
Well,
I
they're
think the
building.
swimming
Are
is-
they, are they building a new high school and not building a pool? That's what Ed Black told me.
Mayor, I'm going to
They're
be
not.
honest with you. I'm not even going to get involved in that. I don't want nothing to do
I
with
can't
that.
believe they're going to build a pool without a high school without a pool.
Dance and dip?
Huh?
What was it, the dance and dip or dip?
Oh, we had dipping dances. We raised money at the pools. That was
You didn't
a
raise
great
money.
time.
You didn't raise any
That's
money. It cost some money.
1955.
Well, I mean, I don't know about Wilson. They made a good amount of money. I don't know what their offset
Palmer
was,
did
but
too.
Well, they didn't make $2 million. They
No,
got a
Brian,
dirt pile there now.
so yeah. I mean, the programs. I love the programs. I love the pools, but I just, $100,000 a year loss is hard to swallow.
It is, but the other thing too we got to think about, and Dr. Robles hit on a nail on the head there, is our program. There is no other pool that I know of the length of an Olympic pool in the area. That's
Correct.
it.
Well, there's also no other pool in the area since Muser's is now closed. Forks doesn't have one. Palmer has one. So you have three pools. We own two of them. Two of the three pools that are in municipal pools.
But if you look at the last couple of years, non-residents attendance have dropped off on our pools as opposed to picking up since Wilson's been gone. And Palmer wasn't allowing non-residents, but now they are allowing non-residents. It's like $475 for a four-person family pass. So I don't know where they're going. They're not coming to us.
They're not
There's a
swimming.
drop-off.
They're not swimming.
Either way, I just think it's
Well,
something to
I
look
think
at.
the other thing is when we
They
have
have a pool
the
in
every
their
other day
backyard.
They have a pool in their backyard.
That's not as attractive to a non-resident.
I'm sorry. Can you say
Could-
that?
yeah, could you-
I believe that having an every other day schedule is probably not too attractive to a non-resident.
Non-resident,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
Absolutely.
a confusing schedule. I think
Yeah.
people don't really.
It's not attractive to the residents, so I don't think the
I
non.
don't know. I know a lot of people that like it.
Well, I get
I
complaints.
know a lot of
nonstop.
people that like it.
It's
And when
one
you say
complaint I don't get.
it's-
I don't get any complaints about the pools in my office.
I know I'm not the only one here that gets complaints on it. It might not
You
call
are.
your office, but they're
Yeah,
complaining.
they just said something on the street about it.
Can I ask one more?
That's why we're here.
And this is on the wastewater. This is the 280,
260.
260 fund. On the telephone charge. So far this year in August, we had 6,700. If I extrapolate that out, that's just a little over 10,000, and we're budgeting 51,000. And I'm just not sure why there's that big of a difference. I would think that expense would be periodic, that we would have it, and it would be reflective of what we have as far as year-to-date August is concerned.
That looks like it's a typo. 'Cause
Where is
if you
that?
look at the 2024 budget, it was 21,485. I think it ended up to be a typo.
I think we should, Mark, why don't you give us an update on all of the expenses year to date as of the end of September?
Well, Roger, do you see where in?
I see what you're saying. Yeah, it might be,
I think it's
that,
a typo.
I think that's right. I think, Mark, that might, instead of a 5, that might be a 2. So there's $30,000 there.
Although,
That's
30%
of the cost of the pools.
although in the 260 fund, it's more beneficial for us to have a higher budget because we get another 10%.
Yeah. Good point, Dave.
All right.
That's a good point.
On the stormwater, 265 fund, the contingency, $739,000. We didn't have anything this year
I
as
don't.
of August.
I budget that. I don't know what that is.
Well, the contingency is basically just going into the fund balance for any projects, anything that we're not bringing in for stormwater. So if we have projects, we collect about $1 million a year. If there are projects that are exceeding that, or I'm sorry, this is the offset. So we bring about $1 million in, so we're balancing the budget saying, okay, we have a contingency line item. So here are all the expenses, and then we've got about $730,000 left over that gets budgeted as the contingency, just to offset that revenue line item.
Okay. So, but there's
So it's
been no
on-
expense, right, in that line?
Correct. Right, I think, Dave, you can speak to that about we've started projects, right, but we don't.
Yeah,
have
we're,
any-
we're underway with 4 right now and working on a 5th with Williams Township to try and solve some of that flow back by Belmont and by
Center.
Booger's house.
Boy, I was down. I looked at that the other day, and somebody has really built a bridge over that swale.
Yeah,
I
it would be that resident
yeah.
who,
So,
you know,
Obviously,
he's
that's
done a number in there.
just siphons.
so just as far as the budget is concerned, and I'm just having a hard time wrapping my head around this. In our actual 2022, there's 0.
Mhm.
What we spent in 2023 and 2024 year-to-date August are both 0. But we budget $700,000 in here.
That's the surplus that's being collected before we spend it.
Correct.
Yeah, it's really.
It's just really, it's just to
contingency
balance the budget, saying, okay, we have $1 million of revenue, we have, say $300,000 of actual expenses that we know of, and then the rest has to get balanced somewhere. So the offset is just in a contingency, saying, okay, here's the rest of the money, we don't spend it, it goes into the fund
You
balance.
can call it a surplus.
Right.
But it'll be spent in the next 2 or 3 years.
Right,
Maybe, yeah.
probably not, even maybe.
Dave will spend it.
Yeah, honestly, we're just having
Well, we
trouble
haven't spent
funding
any
the
in the
property.
last 3 years, right?
Well, we
Right.
But the plan that we presented to City Council didn't call for any expenditures. It's for what, 3 years?
When we first implemented the program, we had to go through all those studies. We had to make a pollutant reduction plan. We had to do the credit manual. We had to do all that stuff, and then we had to do all the research and design work to find properties where we could build that would drain to the Lehigh River. And now we've done a lot of that stuff, and then we went into design on the actual BMPs. But we still have to build, even with the ones we're currently under construction with, that might take care of 15 to 20% of our permit limit. So we have, the Williams Townships they're gonna be some big builds.
Can we charge PennDOT for any of that? Since they built I-78 without any controls?
Well, they built that basin back there that doesn't
Small.
function, and that's the one we're asking to, if they'll either lease it to us into perpetuity, because they don't take care of it either.
Let me just, Roger, we do this also in the 101 fund. We have both contingencies and prior year undesignated and contingency line items, which serve the same functions in 101. So, but it's actually, we do have a contingency line item in 101.
Uh-huh.
So usually when we go through this exercise, and at the end, there may be, because this is like now a rounding error, you may have an extra $10,000 that we may need to add. We may have more revenues than expenses, like by $10,000. So we do have contingency line items in 101.
Yeah.
We'll just throw it in there, just so we can have a balanced budget, because we're required to have a balanced budget, period, by the charter. So we have no choice. I see where you're coming from. It's not as confusing as I guess, because you have zero right now, 0 year to date. But if you look at past years, there is a 600,000.
Those are budget numbers, we haven't dipped into the fund.
So at the end of the year, we don't spend any money.
We have here.
Where does it go?
Oh,
It
budget.
stays in the bank and it draws interest.
It stays-
It stays in the fund and pays for all the costs that we off-charge. So just for the sake of numbers, like we take half of our utility crews cost, all the labor, and we charge that to the 265 fund. We take the street sweeping program, we charge that to the 265 fund. We probably, what was the amount we ended up charging off per year? It's gotta be
No,
it's gotta be 300,000 to 400,000. That's why the-
Salaries, we'll have to take a look at that, but I think over the years, yeah, it's well over 200,000.
So there should be expense going there, but maybe it's all done at one Is it, Mark, is that all done at one time, just transferring the expense? So there is expense, it's just not showing yet.
No, the 739, like you said, is gonna go down to the fund balance. That's, and then
Used to build the
That's the fund
BMPs.
balance.
at the end of the year, when everything closes out, we're gonna have potentially $739,000.
And next year, you're gonna have $2 million in revenues, and you're gonna have $1.5 million in contingency.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna double it each year
Eventually,
Well,
well,
it'll
once,
still be a million.
until you start spending it.
until we start spending it.
And that is when Dave decides to start building the BMPs. Right now, they're just planning for them.
Yeah,
Well,
but
the other-
BMPs come out of the MF4 fund, right?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's where it's coming from. That's the $700,000 is
Yeah.
for.
It's for, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So the other thing is what we've been also, the idea, we've talked to Dave about it, the consultants also brought this idea up, is also, once now that we have some history here of revenue coming in, we could finance all of the improvements and go a lot faster.
Right,
You
okay.
know, so you could do a revenue bond, for example.
Very dumb.
So, again, in the sewer services, it's 808 fund, 43111.
That'll be me.
That's a Mark.
I'm sorry, which account, Dr. Rogan?
808.
It's management services.
Okay.
And I'm just wondering what this is, because all of a sudden, we're currently at about 46,000 that we spent up through August. If I extrapolate that out, that comes out to right at $70,000. Next year, we're budgeting 145,000, double what our projection for this year is. And I'm just wondering what that is.
What that is basically the entire sewer services expense budget is an allocation of expenses from predominantly the general fund. So if you recall, Standard & Poor's recommended that we create a new fund for kind of our underground sewer lines, basically. And so what we did is we said, okay, we know what we charge for sewer revenues, right? So what we charge the residents for that. And then we allocated portions of, a large portion of, say, my department goes to this, to the sewer fund, for maintaining the bills or answering questions and collecting the money, blah, blah, blah. If there are road closures due to sewer repairs, if the police or fire department is involved, obviously Dave's team, Public Works, when they're fixing sewer lines, a portion of their expenses will go here. So as those expenses change in the 101 fund, the percentages are fixed. Say it's 10. Well, actually, I think my department's probably a good 30% of my department expenses goes into here. So as our expenses grow, what will come over into this fund will grow based on that percentage. So if management services across the board in 101 went up, and we're taking pieces of that from all the other departments, so say from administration, if there's some overhead there, Public Works, as they have management services, those expenses will then go into the sewer services fund based on the kind of the preset percentage that we worked up three years ago now. Does that make?
That fund is very confusing. Dr. Ruggles, that expense you brought up is not reflected in the 101 budget. You know what I mean?
Okay. I just don't understand how, for this year up through August, we've expended 48,000. And if I extrapolate that, that means at the end of the year, we'll be right at about 70,000. Okay. Next year, we're budgeting 140,000.
But that's not a line item that's not a recommended expense.
It's an expense allocated from
The
the
general
general fund in
Yeah.
other management services. So across the other departments, a portion of their expenses are moved over into here. So if their management services.
It means we're simply charging off more of
Right.
the general fund expense
Yeah.
to this fund.
That's all.
I understand that, but I mean, what I'm seeing is that we're charging off, we're projecting that we're going to be charging off a lot more next year.
So can we maybe answer that question?
Uh-huh.
Can we provide you more detail? We'll have to go back and go into, and look at where that's coming from.
Okay.
And so in
Oh,
other words, for council, there's a formula behind each one of those numbers. So we can't see it here on the PDF. So we have to dig into the formula and look at our notes.
And Dave, this is just a real quick question. I saw in the sewer services, AutoCAD software and, $1,250.
Is that in the 808?
And I was just going to question how we purchase that license, because I mean, typically you can purchase an AutoCAD software, you get 5 seats, or you get whatever. I noticed I think in engineering or someplace, it was also a line item, and I just want to make sure that we're not purchasing them independently when we can just purchase one license that has 5 seats.
Mazin does all of the license purchasing. I'd have to ask him how
Okay.
he does it.
Well,
We,
it would,
You may want to just check to make sure we're not.
It's still spread out through the budget.
right, so
So engineering has 3 seats, they pay for 3 and 3/5.
they pay for three seats, and then if, say, 10% of engineering's budget goes to the sewer services fund, then 10% of that expense would get moved over here.
Okay, as long as
So-
that's the way
so
it's
yeah.
happening. I just didn't want us to buy an independent seat of AutoCAD here and then 5 seats over here. That's all I was asking about.
Got it.
we have a pretty steady number. Like, right now, we have 1 ArcGIS online license. I believe we have 3 AutoCAD licenses. But, as the staff changes over and people, are more acclimated to those types of applications, we'll probably increase the.
Okay.
Any other questions for David?
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you. See you tomorrow. Budget hearing's over. Same time, same place, same bat channel.
So breakfast tomorrow, or?
Yeah.